Donald Trump has still refused to accept the fact that he has lost the election, at least publicly. Seems like privately it's becoming more and more clear to him that he has no chance at flipping this election. But nonetheless, his kids are split on what he should do. So Ivanka Trump, his eldest daughter and White House advisor, thinks that Trump should formally concede the election after the recount in Georgia is completed. Her husband, Jared Kushner, was said to share that view. A source told CNN that Ivanka has approached her father, worried that a drawn-out fight would further harm his reputation. But here's the thing that she's really worried about, and his businesses. So, okay, so I want to talk about that a little more before we move on to Don Jr. and Eric Trump. So he's using this ridiculous election battle to raise money, right? And some of that money might get funneled into his businesses.
Yeah.
And so I think he sees this as a money-making opportunity. So I don't think that her argument to Trump is very persuasive. Would it hurt his reputation? I mean, at this point, how can you possibly hurt his reputation more? Like, he's awful, like bungled the pandemic response. The economy is awful for the vast majority of Americans. Has carried himself as like this weird dictator, who sends federal agents to protest to like snatch people up in unmarked cars. Like, he's an awful person who has no reputation left to spare. So I just, those are my thoughts. But what do you think, Ben?
I love that second thought of yours, that he has no shame. That there's nothing that's gonna make him back down. Like, normal people look at the amount of embarrassment that he is suffering right now because of his arrogance, and we're like, there's no way in the world we would wanna be on the international stage seen as a big baby, like the emperor with no clothes. And this is exactly what he runs headlong into it. So I think Ivanka knows that. And I think that she's not actually trying to persuade him. She's trying to give herself an exit ramp off of his collision with disaster.
Yep. And who knows, it might be her attempt to like, save her own reputation in her mind by encouraging him to step down. Not step down, but to concede. So Melania Trump is on board with what Ivanka wants, which might mark the first time that they agree on anything. So that's nice to see, But let's move on to Don Jr. and Eric Trump. So Don Jr. in particular has echoed and pushed forward Trump's claims, including those that Trump has shared with no evidence. Don Jr. and Eric Trump are telling their father to aggressively fight to the end, echoing baseless claims that the election has been rigged and the outcome should change. And so here's an example from Don Jr. He says, we went from 4 years of Russia rigged the election to elections can't be rigged really fast, didn't we? Which, I think pretty early on in the Russia investigation, it was clear that Russian meddling did not have an impact on the outcome of the election. But there was a big investigation as to whether or not Trump colluded with Russia to try to get an edge in the election, right? So I feel like this election rigging narrative coming from Donald Trump is gonna be what right wingers harp on for 4 years straight. Yeah. Similar to how, Democrats harped on Russia for 4 years straight. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't think that this narrative is just gonna go away. Even after Trump is out of office, we're gonna hear this over and over again. That's my prediction.
Yeah, he thinks Junior thinks he had a really good argument there. And it's a reasonable argument until you flip it on its head and say, wait a minute, 4 years ago, you didn't believe election rigging was possible because you won. And now the only reason you believe it's possible is because you lost. So if you wanna point out hypocrisy, Don Jr., you gotta start in your own backyard, champ.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.